Hey guys, so in this video, we're going to review an interesting book called The World is Flat by Thomas Loren Friedman. The world is flat. What does he mean by that? We all knew that Columbus long before confirmed that the world is not flat. Well, they all said that the world is round in terms of geography. But Thomas Friedman said the world is flat in terms of globalization. Let's get details on that. The title of this book suggests that it is trying to convey an idea that is unbelievable to most. However, upon reading the book and examining the author's key points, one finds that the book is not challenging that which you already know, but rather explaining the world around you. A prime example of this is the opening chapter. The first chapter starts by explaining Friedman's revelation that the world is flat. While on a trip to India to investigate and observe its information technology advances, Thomas Friedman came up with the notion that the world is flat. He actually coined this term after speaking with the CEO of Infosys Technologies Limited, Nanda Nilekani, who told him that the main reason that so many jobs were being outsourced to India is that technology had made it possible. Friedman then uses this idea of a flat world to explore globalization's causes and implications. Friedman began by listing 10 forces that he believed flattened the world: the fall of the Berlin Wall, the day that Netscape went public, other workflow software, open software, outsourcing to highly educated and cheaper Indian labor, offshoring labor to China, Walmart's supply chain management, insourcing by companies such as UPS, informing by Google and other search engine users, and the steroids, such as wireless technology that will continue to cause all of these others to grow. Friedman then describes the state that the world is entering that he likes to call globalization 3.0, an era where individuals from all countries, both rich and poor, drive the globalization, where in the past, globalization was driven by manufacturing and other forces. Globalization 3.0 will be driven by software.
American and free trade. It means for this part attention to the United States and its role in the flat world. Friedman argues that action taken to limit or protect trade are in the end damaging to the American economy. American workers need to instead be prepared to compete against workers from all of the world. Refers to the concept of free trade as the trade between different countries where the exchange of goods is not restricted by legal or economic barriers. The United States government must instead invest in education and job training for its young people and workers that will prepare them for competition with workers from all of the world. The second one is chapter 6 about the untouchables. It means a challenge that can be overcome by people with the right knowledge, skills, ideas, and self-motivation. According to Friedman, an American young person must think of himself or herself as competing against every young Chinese, Indian, and Brazilian for the same position of employment. The flat world amplifies inequalities between rich and poor and among nations at different levels of development and wealth. The third one is chapter 7 about the right stuff. It means the growth of the internet. One of education's most important goals is to demonstrate how to navigate that virtual world and how to sift through it and separate the noise, the field, and the lies from the facts. Friedman claims that patience and curiosity are important characteristics to cultivate in the flat world. It means key as inspires people to learn in depth about topics of interest. Such connections reflect the real complexity of the world. Friedman also suggests that Americans must help young people to develop relational skills rather than only intellectual ones, because working together with others from around the country and what is the norm in the flat world. And the fourth one is chapter 8 about the quiet crisis. The United States is undergoing a quiet crisis as it falls behind others nations more willing to invest in adapting to the flat world. Friedman explores various reasons for Americans' resistance to the change needed to thrive in today's global economy. Fifth one is chapter 9 about this is not a test. It means during the Cold War, the main challenge then came from those who wanted to put up walls like the Berlin Wall. Nations that had previously isolated themselves from other economically like the Soviet Union were forced to enter the capitalist economy. The central challenge facing the flat world is the increasing lack of borders or walls between countries, societies, and economies. Friedman argues that American society must invest in lifelong learning and benefits to allow workers to remain mobile and adaptable.
Part 3 of the book talks about developing countries and the flat world. It starts in chapter 9 and talks about the Virgin of Guadalupe. The statue of this patron saint can be found in many houses and in every single town in Mexico. However, the bottom of these statues have stopped reading Made in Mexico and have started reading Made in China. Mexico had been the place where Americans looked to produce labor-intensive products at a relatively high level of quality. However, now, China has assumed that position. We now rely on China for the production of low-tech, labor-intensive products that once came from Mexico. Mexico had been able to take advantage of what Friedman calls wholesale reform. This type of reform is accomplished on the macroeconomic level. When a country opens itself to foreign investment and trade, it has taken the first step towards becoming competitive in the world market. Mexico took this first step by adopting NAFTA in the 1990s. China took this step by joining the WTO in 2001. By using the vast amount of cheap labor available in China, they've been able to surpass Mexico in the production of goods that are labor intensive. China has taken this process one step further with retail reform. Friedman says that this type of reform requires investment in the upgrading of 4 things: infrastructure, culture, regulatory institutions, and education in the country. The purpose of this type of reform is to provide citizens of a country with the most opportunities possible. Egypt has attempted this type of reform by guaranteeing every college graduate a job. However, this hasn't improved Egypt's economic situation. The need for these jobs was artificially created. China, however, has spent billions of dollars investing in these areas and has begun to reap the benefits. The country has been able to away from producing low-tech products like clothing and now produces high-tech products like computer hardware. IBM, a huge company, has even licensed a Chinese manufacturer to make laptops with the IBM logo.
Part 4: Companies and the Flat World. In this chapter, there are 5 important rules that we need to see. First is when the world is flat, whatever can be done will be done. But the only question is whether it will be done by you or to you. So basically, the rule told us that if you have an idea, you have to pursue it because someone else might have a similar idea and then pursue it faster than you think. But it's just a matter of who is ready to get it done. In the flat world, whatever can be done anywhere. The second rule is the most important competition today is between you and your own imagination. This is one of the biggest competition between you and your own imagination. Imagination is the only aid to create a business that had not existed before. These entrepreneurs didn't simply adapt or improve someone else's idea and make it cheaper or better. Most of them were just competing with themselves, with their own imagination about what could be done. In the flat world, individual or business who can stretch their imagination can turn their vision into new products and services. And rule number 3, the small company shall act big. Being small company can act big in the flat world. The small company can offer service to the bigger company to help them spread their wings as well as to grow the small business into a larger one. For instance, there is no FedEx or DHL in the Middle East. Local company in the Middle East can offer FedEx to be their courier across the Middle East. So this shows a small company uses their own imagination to create business that previously did not exist. And rule number 4, big company shall act small. Some of big companies need to learn to act small as a business. Big companies must be able to collaborate with their existing customer, and by doing so, they act small. For example, a well-known brand Starbucks allows their customer to be their own coffee designer or customize their coffee as their exact specification. Although Starbucks could serve 1,000 variations of coffee, they still need to act small. And rule number 5, the best companies are the best collaborators. In the flat world, anything can be done and anything could be evolved. As the time goes by, business structures such as technology and innovation, marketing, or even manufacturing will be more advanced and complex, and there is no business could stand alone. Hence, by collaborating, the creation of value will begin. For instance, a video game company discovered that when they combine the right music with the right game, they not only sold many more copies of that game, but they could spin off the music for sale on CD or download it as well. Part 5, Globalization and the Local. This chapter discussed about the Americans are worried about cultural imperialism as globalization increases. This worry was reasonable because it was primarily American-based manufacturers and service providers, American brands and American movie makers, American singers and American entertainers, American clothing designers and American fast food chains that were the best in position to take advantage of the falling of the walls of flattening the world. However, other factors related to globalization allows for unique cultures to remain intact and be strengthened around the world. The first factor is uploading because it allows us to share ideas with people across borders and preserve local culture. Another factor is immigrant. Immigrants can stay in touch with their native cultures through technology like satellite TV or internet usage. For a long time, India mostly received entertainment content from the West, but lately it has become a center for animation and gaming design. One reason is that they've included traditional Indian artists in their workforce. The company Jadoo Works employs children of Hindu temple artists who paint and sculpt by training them in digital animation as well as giving them to practice their traditional skills because the two skills reinforcing each other. So, however, in this book, Thomas Friedman claims that globalization is not always exploitative. It can also help to preserve cultures.
Friedman uses the example of the rural farmer in India who see the big cities and feel that there is nothing that they can do to move their situation, besides participate in the corruption of their government. He says that they don't need charity, they just need to be given away to help themselves move up to the middle class. The flattening of the world allows people to see where they stand compared to people in other countries. And it has been a slap in the face for Muslims. They are frustrated because even though they abide by the strict rules by their religion, their country are still not the most prosperous. He says that the only way for other countries to try to help ease this frustration is to collaborate with Arab Muslim progressive group as much as possible.
The final part of the book talks about imagination. The dismantling of the Berlin Wall on 11/9 dared to imagine an open world where everyone would be free to realize his or her potential through creative imagination, while 9/11 dared to imagine the wrath that could be brought in this open world through destructive imagination. The aim of imagination can affect outcomes. At the same time, David Neeleman was creating JetBlue with his hard work and creative intelligence. And at the same time, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed used his imagination to scheme up a horrific set of acts to inflict pain on innocent people during 9/11. The attacks of 9/11 worked through a global supply chain. The ease of communication, travel, and connection made it possible for terrorists all over the world to collaborate. President Bush then used this event for political purposes. He changed America into solely a terrorist fighting group and drove a wedge between the US and many other people. Arabic Muslims are painted as harmful people, while Indian Muslims are of no threat. He turned the US from a place that exports hope to one that exports fear. Friedman also talks about the oil industry as a barrier to democracy. Since the leaders can get rich by drilling their natural resources, they have no need to tax or develop the skills of their people. Sometimes it takes necessity to create imagination and development. We see that the most creative innovation in the Arab-Muslim world happens in places with little or no oil reserves, because they are being pushed to adapt and better their own societies. At the end of the book, Friedman talks about how, when his own daughter went off to college, he felt as though he was dropping his daughter off in a much more dangerous world than when she was born in. She can't explore the world like she was able to. The flattening of the world has created many challenges, opportunities, and problems and threats. We must find the delicate balance between all of these things. On this flat earth, the most important attribute you can have is imagination and innovation. We must push ourselves to continue to thrive in these areas as we compete in the global world.